I remember about 5 or 6 years ago, there was BuzzFeed in New York, and they did something very radical. They're an online brand, recently made a big noise about how much they use AI. And 5 or 6 years ago, they started printing off their website, making it into a little magazine and handing it out in Times Square. And I thought it was a fantastic example of trying to build omni-channel customers out of their readers. And I think just last week, I was walking down Oxford Street, and I saw the Shein pop-up store. And it gave me the same feeling, which, all that to say, I'm very excited about today's panel. And so I think first, I would love to hear from the perspective of retailers, what is the impact of AI, and what are you doing about it? So should we start with Kingfisher?
Yes, happy to. I wasn't expecting you to come to me first. So I think, obviously, we have to start, I guess, with generative AI. It's the hype right now. It's on everyone's minds. Certainly for us, we've been doing AI for decades when it comes to cyber instant detection or automation of a lot of our support tooling. But more interestingly now, I think we're starting to look internally and externally. So externally, looking at our contact centers, how we can use large language models to help with support centers, to help our colleagues answer questions more intimately with more detail. You consider the domain we're in, Kingfisher's DIY. So a lot of the time we have tradespeople and pros calling us, asking for advice as well as products. So being able to draw upon a vast ocean of data curated in such a way that it gives you an answer to a very specific question for our colleagues, which often don't have that background, is super powerful for us. And then I think there's a lot around internal productivity that we're doing. So we're obviously partnered with all three of the large cloud providers, lucky us. And one of the things we're doing there is thinking about how we can embed some of the AI and Gen AI capability into the tooling internally as well, so we can improve the productivity of our teams. They're just some of the things that we're experimenting with right now, as well as the AI tooling that we're starting to experiment with in stores as well.
Really interesting. So it's not only customers, but it's also your partners and your vendors.
Yeah, it has to be, because if we rely on a single technology with a single data set, you're only getting part of the pie. The true power comes in aggregating, certainly when it comes with generative AI, aggregating those large language models with your own proprietary data and the models that you build internally, which is for us is DIY. So that's where the power really starts to be realized.
Mm. And now, Leona, Levi's is it's a heritage company.
Yes.
But they're making a lot of noise about AI. So what's going on?
Yeah, I'd probably say that we split AI in like 3 buckets. We bucket it into improving consumer experience, digital transformation, and then similar to what you said about driving efficiency internally with our operations as well. And we look at AI through the lens of solving problems and then seizing bigger opportunities for us as a brand. I think if you look at consumer experience, no surprises, we're talking about our loyalty program. So we have a Red Tab loyalty program, and there we use AI to fuel and enhance some of our benefits that we offer consumers. So making sure that we're offering personalized benefits to the consumers. And that's really helped us acquire members in the right way, but also make sure that they're engaging with our loyalty program. And then just your bog standard on-site personalized recommendations when it comes to products as well. So getting consumers to add more than one product into their basket, but also kind of the full outfit experience, which is incredibly important when you think about Levi's. And we don't just sell bottoms, we sell tops and jumpsuits as well, as you can see. The second pillar is really about like efficiency and how do we improve our internal operations. And I'd probably use the example of how we use AI to drive some of our promotional activity. So really we use a model, a system that will help us determine like what assortment should be in our Black Friday offers, or most recently, last year, Singles Day for China as well. And it really drives what assortment we're including in those offers, and then also the kind of sweet spot in terms of discount rate as well. So I guess, using it from a more promotional lens. And then the last one, which is probably on most retailers' brands at the moment, right, with the kind of increase in distribution costs, we look at how do we use AI to tell us what is the best mechanic to deliver product to our consumers. So we have a proprietary tool, which is a predictive tool, which says this consumer is close to this store, so we're going to ship the order from our store versus our distribution center. And this is really done to make sure that we offer consumers the best experience, so it gets quicker to the consumer. And then also from an EBIT point of view, we want to make sure that it's a profitable method for us as well. And I think that this is really, really imperative at the moment when we're really trying to make sure from a profitability standpoint, we really shine there as well. So yeah, that's some of the ways that we use AI internally.
Really interesting. And should we talk to the vendors as well about, for Matt, for example, what are you seeing from when you're working with businesses like Levi's?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Matt. I'm Chief AI and Innovation Officer at Ancoris. We're a Google partner. So I can talk about kind of the Google application of their technology. Other cloud platforms are available, of course. So what we're seeing is very similar to what you were saying there, that you can bucket this into different areas. So do you use it to improve customer experience? Do you use it to improve back office processes? Do you use it to try and streamline your operations? The key thing for me is working with customers to try and understand. You can have all the technology in the world, but the most important thing is what problem are you trying to solve. So what is your use case? Because we want to start with the problem, not the solution. And what we find when we do that is that often what customers need to do, yes, generative AI, which is a new sort of hype technology in the industry, can have a role to play. But equally, you can use things like what we would now call sort of traditional machine learning techniques, where you train systems to either accurately predict something, make a prediction, or spot a pattern, or classify information, or even use a simple kind of analytics process as well. So the really important thing with all this is that, yes, it does have a part to play in the areas that we're talking about today, but it's not the only kind of tool in the toolkit. There's a range of different tools you could use, and this is just one of those. It's not a kind of silver bullet. It's not a sort of a magic wand, but it can sort of assist you to kind of get to what you need to do.
And what about from the commerce tools point of view?
Yeah, I think plus one on everything that Matt was sort of alluding to. I think we're looking at this the same way. For us, it's effectively an optimistic answer and a pragmatic answer. The optimistic answer starts out very pragmatically because it reminds me of big data and data science like 10, 15 years ago. And it's the same fad. But I think this time around, we actually have something really meaningful here in the way that AI can understand and synthesize data, how it can enrich data, and so on and so forth. And I think what a lot of vendors and commerce platforms usually jump to is product recommendations and personalizations. Those seem to be like the usual lowest hanging fruits. And so obviously that's easily supportive. The pragmatic approach to that is, I think, if you really believe in the notion of composable commerce, we believe that AI shouldn't just be like a team, like almost like an innovation team. AI needs to almost be like in your DNA. It needs to be part of your culture. And therefore, we need to figure out, where does AI actually sit? So when you think about the things that Gen AI specifically is good for, it's creating content, it's making decisions, and maybe you can even prompt it to do like operational efficiencies, as we heard before. But if it's content, it should probably sit in a content management system. If you want to do search, merchandising, engagement, discovery, it should probably sit with the search engine and not necessarily with the commerce engine per se. So I think it's all about understanding where it sits, where it can be helpful, and it starts with understanding where the problem is, what the use case is, and how you solve for that. And we think composable commerce is effectively the infrastructure that enables generative AI, also because we have access to all that data.
Yeah, if I could just come in on that. So that's a really important point that you made there, Michael, that people think that to do sort of all this AI stuff, and I think I've seen every kind of breakout session today has got something to do with AI. So everyone wants to kind of talk about it. Often people think it's kind of the engineering teams, the IT teams, they have to do this stuff, and the simple answer is that's not actually how you get the best benefit from applying this technology in your organisation. When you use these kind of services, we call them large language models, but basically you put text prompts in and you get text back out, or you get other models where you get images out, or voice out, or video. The best kind of the best outcomes you can get is where you have your kind of business subject matter experts or your domain experts actually engineering those prompts to put into the models. And also the other reason for that is because they have the kind of critical judgment and critical thinking to understand what these models are actually producing as well, because they are generative in nature, and they work by trying to predict the output that you're expecting. So you need to have kind of people from your kind of business domain, your subject matter domain, making sure that that model is grounded in the right information and is generating the right outputs.
I'd build on that as well. Yeah, just a little bit, I think, because I think with Gen AI, big data, blockchain, and then actually AI before that in the 50s and the 60s, it's been, we've got the cycle of trends. I think a lot of the time, the power of AI, at least for omnichannel with Kingfisher and DIY, is actually in more around the recommenders that you were alluding to earlier. So one of the things we're quite good at is correlation. So we're quite good at correlation of data. So I could tell that if you've purchased some garden equipment, a strimmer, we'll correlate that with your buying behavior and determine, maybe you've got a garden and maybe you're going to buy more garden equipment in the future. That's overfitting the data from us from an ML perspective, because what we're assuming is that you've got a garden. We're not thinking about whether you may be buying this as a gift for someone. In fact, if we recommend more garden products to you, you actually don't care. So the interesting thing now with the compute and power that we can run against the AI models that have been developed a long time ago is the causality. We can now start to get to the causality of a purchase and really understand who a customer is, a full 360 view of who a customer is, so we can actually make very intelligent recommendations, and that bleeds into our loyalty, understanding if you're a tradesperson, you've got a project, we determine that you're going to be building a patio, so these are the things we want to recommend to you. So that's more interesting to us than necessarily the Gen AI, which is super cool, but arguably less monetizable, I think.
Yeah. No, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I bought my mum a scented eye pillow for her birthday recently, but now a lot of data shows that I'm this really holistic wellness person, and that's sort of the opposite of the person I am. I think the one term I do want to hone in on a little bit is this idea of hyper-personalization, and it's something that's come up a lot. And so to what extent is this a new leap, and how are you applying it? Should we talk to it?
Yeah,
Leona?
I wouldn't say it's a new leap. I'd say that it's pretty integral to, I guess, our loyalty program and the stuff that we want to do there, right? So I think, great, we have a loyalty program, we acquire data for consumers, and then we try to personalize the experience. But for us, again, using the lens of solving problems as well, and some of the typical challenges that you get with buying denim online. I mean, size and fit is an area that we're really leveraging data to make sure that we're recommending the right size and fit for our products. So if you were a size 8 in a 501, then you might be slightly smaller in a stretch pair of jeans instead. So just really, again, obvious use cases, but use cases that are really, really important for us to generate demand, but also offer consumers that really direct consumer experience, better experience. And then we're also using our loyalty program to, I guess, acquire more information about consumers. So you said there about okay, you've probably got a garden, but it could be a gift. I mean, we want to try to acquire data from our consumers in the right way. So asking them sensible questions, again, trying to determine why they're shopping with us across the site as well. And then hopefully that builds a better profile of our consumers, and then we can offer some of those more personalized experiences. I think also we're utilizing personalization not just from an online point of view, but also connecting with our omni-channel ecosystem as well. So how do we also leverage that data when consumers come into store so that we're offering them the best experience there as well? So think about kind of hyper-personalized recommendations. So obviously not greeting you by your name, but if we know that you're a consumer that shopped with us before, giving recommendations of product that they might like that are new in our collection for them. So yeah, that's pretty much how we're tackling it at Levi's.
It does seem like one of the key benefits of personalization is reducing returns, because that's obviously a huge cost center for the industry now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's sorry, that's my microphone. I think the hyper personalization. Some of the interesting things we're starting to explore is, the more when you have a customer, it's an exchange of value. When you want them to give you data on who they are, and in return you need to provide them with utility. You need to provide them with value, and the value that we try to provide is a really personalized, relevant. It's the 3 R's really of loyalty: relevance, recognition, and reward. We try to provide them with a really relevant experience, and part of that is connecting the data they give us to meteorological data, for example. So if we know where a customer lives, and we roughly know what the weather is going to be over the next 7 days, we can start to build buying behavior patterns and understand what actually might be interesting to them from a purchase decision based on what we know about them before, especially if they're a trade or an amateur, and versus what we believe they're going to be building. So we start to pull in, the more data we can pull in that doesn't immediately seem obvious, like social listeners, that's really interesting for us. But meteorological data, because we're so seasonal in our trading, is actually super interesting for us to start making recommendations. And actually part of the reason, so we're deploying commerce tools in a number of areas, and one of the reasons we're doing that is because we're moving to a composable architecture. We're removing the monoliths, we're removing the legacy, moving to a much more component architecture, because we want to be able to get to the data much more easily, so we can make those aggregations and recommendations. So, so the hyper-personalization covers quite a few facets for us. For sure. Yeah.
Interesting. Matt, we were talking before about loyalty schemes and the omni-channel customer in the age of AI, and you had an interesting thought that you wanted to share.
Yeah, I think omni-channel is an interesting term. You see retailers that were born online. Gymshark's another example where they've got a retail experience now, sort of bricks and mortar. I think my thinking around this is there what we see is people tend to conflate customer habit with customer loyalty, and they're two distinct things, but they're easily confused. And it's quite hard sometimes to work out whether someone's buying from you habitually or whether actually they have loyalty. And as Chris was saying, it's when you buy something, it's transactional. It's a transaction. But what people really want to do is create a relationship, and those are two related but distinct things. So when you are thinking about trying to kind of serve customers across all these different channels, you've got to try and make sure that your transactions are as frictionless as possible, that there's no kind of barriers to that transaction happening. You want to try and extend the transaction, so we want to try and make sure that people add things into their baskets, maybe take your recommendations, but also that they feel like they identify with you as a brand, and that kind of brand affinity or brand loyalty is, a lot of that's about aligning. People feel like they align with their values, align with your values as a brand, and they perceive. I'm a cyclist, and I bought a Brompton folding bike because I started commuting, and now I just swear by them. I'm absolutely kind of on board with that brand for all sorts of reasons, and I've got loyalty to that brand. because it gets me around. I don't need to take sort of public transport in London. I get some exercise, I can build that into my day. It just makes a difference. So I think people think kind of, AI is going to kind of, is it going to destroy kind of loyalty? Is it going to destroy omni-channel? And I think that for me, it's just a technology. So it's not, technologies are neutral by definition. It's about how they're applied, and they're applied by people. So really, is AI going to kind of, solve your kind of omni-channel challenges? Well, the answer is, and I'm sorry, it's an engineer's answer. The answer is it depends. It depends on how you apply it, who you work with to apply it, and what technologies you use. So if you apply it in the right way, yes, you can have a really positive outcome. But if you apply it in the wrong way, it may make no difference, or it may actually be quite detrimental to what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. So pick the right tool, pick the right people, and apply it in the right way.
Mm.
Michael, you're nodding your head.
I was going to chip in.
Oh, go you go first.
Just because I feel strongly about this one. So I agree with what you're saying, but what I will say is that I believe you gain customer loyalty via omni-channel by serving the consumers in the right way, no matter how they interact with your brand. I feel like you gain loyalty by giving them a good experience, right? There's reasons why you shop with brands, because it's easy, because you always find the right product, it's always in the right size. And when I think about applying this to Levi's, I think about how do we use AI to determine what assortments are in our stores or online, the size, breadth of our collections. You talked a little bit about seasonality, which is a nightmare when you're selling denim online, because nobody wants to buy a pair of jeans when it's really, really hot. But in those instances, we need to make really smart, quick decisions to make sure that there are shorts in our stores, that we have lightweight product in our stores at the right time. And I feel like that does help, because it means that you gain loyalty from consumers because you're giving them a great experience. It's sweltering hot. I'm going past a Levi's store and those pair of shorts that I want to wear right now are there and available to you. So just to give you a slightly different lens and apply it to Levi's.
Well, and I'd support that just from just taking the heat wave thing. I mean, we've got seasonal plans that determine that this time of year we'd quite like to have heaters in the stores.
Good point.
And of course, when the seasons are given, the various influences are changing, that impacts our stores, warehouses, range, and supply chain. So the more real-time the data we have, in a similar vein to providing the right clothes with Levi, we can provide the right capabilities and tools to our customers and provide them with fans, for example. But without that real-time data and the curation of that content very rapidly to provide those recommendations at scale through things like supply chain visibility, it's very, very difficult to do it with just a human in the loop.
Yeah, and we've done some work for a specialist sports equipment retailer that was looking to improve its purchasing processes. So to your point about if it's hot, can we try and make sure that we've got different stock ready to go? What we found is that actually you don't have to kind of go all in on kind of modern generative AI. You can use kind of traditional kind of machine learning and analytics techniques to basically give yourselves the ability to have a better idea of what you need and when you might need it. And that's not just in terms of kind of seasonality. It could also be what agreements you already have in place with suppliers and what point in cycles, different financial cycles, discounts come in and stock weights and things like that. So there's all the kind of stuff in the background. So what we're seeing is that people sort of come into this AI stuff thinking that it'll create content or it'll create images, or I can have create a very conversational, rich kind of customer experience, and it absolutely can. But actually, you can get a lot of benefit behind the scenes, as it were. So can you streamline those processes that are actually there to actually fulfill the transaction that you're trying to make with the customer?
My takeaway so far from our discussion has been that AI and technological advances are basically transforming a lot of businesses into hedge funds, in that they're able to use these sort of macro data and weather to make key business decisions in a way that only a few places were able to before.
Well, as a business, we do tend to be shorted quite a lot by the hedge funds, so you might be right.
Great. you can get them back then.
Yeah.
Michael, I want to bring you in because you wanted to respond before.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to unpack there. I think the common theme there is data. You have to have the right data. Big data, Gen AI, in-memory databases. If you don't have the data hygiene, you're just going to have crap data faster. And that doesn't help anyone because the Gen AI really needs, I mean, Gen AI is amazing, again, at synthesizing data, enriching data, and driving that personalization and loyalty. But I think getting the data right and also across the different channels, like when we're talking about omnichannel, it's getting the data model right. It's not just the data, but it's also the data model and how you apply that. So I think that's really, really powerful. And I think where we see, again, our backbone, our infrastructure providing our insights, whether it's price, whether it's customer information, or whether it's product information, to the right systems at the right time. So whether it's your content management system, whether it's your promotions engine, whether it's your product catalog, we want to provide that at the right time. And the beauty of our platform is that we're cloud natively built. So that means we're a first-class citizen in the cloud and for the cloud. There's no more downloading, uploading, massaging the data, like maneuvering things around. So everything that you have, and especially for someone like Kingfisher that works with all the different cloud infrastructure providers, right? You're effectively unlocking an entire ecosystem of BigQuery and different co-pilots and I don't know, visual AI searches and what have you. And so I think there's a huge opportunity there.
Really, really interesting. I think we have about 12 minutes left, and so we might move to some questions. So if there's questions in the audience, just have a think. But I actually wanted to start with one, if that's okay, which is that over the weekend, the FT did a big piece on surge pricing or dynamic pricing, and this idea that companies can have a more dynamic pricing structure that offers, in times of lower demand, a lower price to consumers, and in times of higher demand, they might bring it up a little bit. And I was wondering if we see a future for that in sort of more traditional retail offerings. Does anyone want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I think it's something we're exploring. We call that markdown pricing.
Yep.
And so this is a really strong use case for predictive or prescriptive analytics, I would say, not necessarily AI. I think more traditional ML fitting models work pretty well, but it's exactly that. It's related to the data we extract from seasonal sales, from buyer behaviors, from supply chain. If there's another ship stuck somewhere in a canal, we take all of that data in to consider how we dynamically modify pricing to best suit the customer. And in fact, we're doing a lot of that with Google local inventory ads, LIA, in France and some other regions to try and figure out the best configuration of local products, fulfillment of those products from the various regional stores, and the pricing that goes alongside it to best serve the demographic in that particular region. So that's something we're looking at quite specifically in France, given the geographic layout. But yeah, it's a really strong use case.
Really, really interesting. If there's no other responses to that, then we have some great questions from the audience as well.
I've got one thing on that, Arjun, which is that dynamic pricing is, yes, it can be really powerful. Obviously, we've done it for kind of specialist retailers ourselves, and there's people here in the room today who have kind of intimate knowledge of that stuff. But what I'd say is you need to apply it well, because actually, if you apply it kind of, I don't know if the rest of the panel kind of agree with this or not, but if you misapply it, it can actually be quite negative for what you're trying to do. So again, it comes back to trying to make sure you're doing the right thing for the right reasons in the right way.
Yeah, I think we saw that with Uber, for example. When there's sort of crises and there's a surge price on the app, that people really resisted that, and it did impact them on a PR scale as well.
I mean, I think it's very sensitive to the actual product that you're selling. If you're a high-end fashion luxury retailer, your response is going to be very, very different to that question than if you're just selling sort of commodity items. I think it's really just the seasonality, what you want to apply. But for me, it's also a lot about the customer experience, because what kind of customer experience do you want to drive when you adopt something like dynamic pricing. Like you might actually turn customers away because they feel shortchanged because of that sort of strategy.
Yep.
So.
I guess in my head as well, I was thinking like less about dynamic pricing, but more about dynamic messaging, right? So we have a low demand period. Actually, what do we want to be communicating about our product during that time as well? And you talked a little bit, like for sure, I would say that we are a premium brand and we want to talk about the quality of our products as well. So I think the messaging and making sure that it's hyper personalized to who the consumer is important to us.
So one question from the audience that's come in is on the role of the salesperson. And so they're asking, to what degree and in what aspects will AI take over the salesperson role, and what might new salesperson roles look like in the future?
Can I start this one?
Yeah.
So I'm
Delighted by
that. Because I'm a VP of ecom, and I think that sometimes there is this, I mean, it still exists. I say less so at Levi's, but there's this feeling that there's always this like battle between the channels. What I can honestly say is that there is no better experience than trying on a pair of Levi's jeans in a store. I remember when I first started my role at Levi's, I had just had a baby. She was 4 months old. I really didn't want to try on a pair of jeans, and that sales associate completely transformed my experience in that store. I left feeling confident, with 5 pairs of jeans. I have a lot more now. And I say that to say that I think AI will support them to be even better, but nothing can take away that feeling, that experience that some of those sales associates have. We're definitely looking at ways that we can enable them through kind of giving them a better understanding about who the consumer is when they come in the store. So if we have like the purchase history via the loyalty program, we should enable the sales associate to very quickly be able to see that. But they are so important to any retail business, and I do not believe that we will be replacing them anytime soon.
I'm completely with you. Yeah, completely. I mean, it's slightly different DIY. A lot of people come into the store. Some people come into the store for a coffee and a chat. Some come in for deeply technical advice around products or perhaps a project they've got. It varies by store. Screwfix, we tend to have a slightly younger demographic with more trade experience, so we'll hire ex-pros. In B&Q, and Lynn Beattie, the CTO for B&Q is here today. In B&Q, you have a slightly different demographic again, which is sort of the slightly older, sage-like store colleagues that provide experience and wartime stories. So there's a different experience when you come into the store, but I think what's important for us is e-com growth, launching marketplaces, Gen AI. The stores are still at the center of everything we do, and that's what's going to provide the differentiation in experience for us. It's the people that we bring into the stores. It's not the tech.
Sure. Michael?
Yeah, I mean, for us, the in-store experience is super important, and we're looking at both supporting store associates all the way to the actual hardware, like point of sale systems. So for us, if you're again signing up to the notion of composable commerce, it's just another touch point, and we want to make sure that whoever is owning and running that touch point has all the information. And for me, it's almost like a Tesla autopilot. Like, it gives you all the information. It can drive itself if you choose to do so, but you can at any time override it. And so I think it's really, really powerful. And I don't think we've really gotten to the question of like the 360-degree view of the customer. I mean, I feel like we've talked about it for 20 years and nobody's even solved it, because otherwise we would stop talking about it. But I think in this case, you have all the information about this customer, all the background. So I think it's giving the store associate an enhanced experience, almost like an overlay of all the information to make really, really incredible decisions to provide a seamless experience.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with everything the rest of the panel has said. As a consumer myself, some of the best retail experiences I've ever had have been in store with amazing kind of people who represent the brand of that particular retailer, combined with a great product at the right price. So if you kind of take the human out of that loop, you're missing an ingredient from my perspective. I think AI, if I was in a industry like this, sort of say the creative industries, I'd understand why I'd be worried about the kind of rise of AI in certain industries. But I think in a lot of industries and a lot of sectors, it's additive in nature. It's not necessarily replace. It's not something that will replace things. It can be additive. And I think this is a great example where actually you can have the best possible experience if you actually go into a store and deal with the right people and engage with the right products for the right brand.
Yeah, really, really interesting. We've got a great 1-2 punch question from the audience, which I would love everyone to answer if they could, which is, what is the most exciting future use case for AI in retail that you've seen? And what obstacles within your organization have you observed to implementing it?
I can start with the obstacles.
Go on.
I think at the moment we're running a very large legacy technology estate. That obviously sounds familiar to a lot of people, I think, and the reason we call legacy heritage at Kingfisher. It's our history, and because decisions were made in the past which were the right decisions at the time, based on the information they had, that led to what we have today. So we deal with what we have today, and I'm building the legacy of the future, and so marrying that legacy with new composable cloud-native capabilities is a big part of the challenge we have, because to build something like Nucleus, which is our data platform, we have to take data from SAP ECC, we have to take it from Oracle ATG, we have to take it from the new systems, we have to aggregate that content, abstract it away, put it into the cloud, make it resilient, and then start working with the data to produce really cool things like supply chain visibility or markdown pricing. For us, I think some of the most interesting applications of AI are around supply chain. Being able to streamline supply chain and optimize distribution, we're seeing as a really, we're really excited about that, actually.
Okay, interesting.
I'd echo what you said about distribution, just because it's something I talk about every single week as we see trying to manage our costs. So I talked a little bit before about how we're optimizing how we fulfill orders to consumers. And I think that will only evolve as we start kind of pulling in our store network a little bit more. But I'll also it doesn't sound exciting, but it's exciting to me. It's probably the size and fit experience online. I think we're trying our best to get as personalized as possible in terms of the recommendation when it comes to size. I'd say the biggest obstacle is trends are changing. It used to be all about stretchy, skinny jeans. It's now about loose fit, baggy jeans, and it's making sure that your recommendations align with those trends as well, right? Because you might want to size up 1 or 2 sizes because that's the look right now. So I'd probably say that.
But they should still come in and try them in store.
They should, but also the best expression of the brand is also online. So you've got lots of options at Levi's.
Okay.
Kept my job.
Yep. That's a good hedge. Do you want to jump in, Michael?
Yeah, again, a lot to unpack there. I think for us, on the back-end side of things, how can business users use generative AI to write integrations, right? Like how can you prompt Gen AI or Jasper or what have you to say, you know what, write me an integration into the next chatbot or into this personalization engine or this promotion engine. I think making the business user almost as empowered as like an old school engineer or developer. Like the biggest myth that I'm fighting every single day is this old notion of business versus IT. I don't think that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
I think we're really seeing a productization of these teams from an organizational design perspective. And on the front end, I think how can we provide and how can we be the best infrastructure, the best foundation to a search engine to be more engaging, product discovery, etc. How can we be the best infrastructure for a content management system? How can we help payment gateways on fraud detection systems to get all the data so they can detect fraud and make the right capture and authorization aspects? And then I think one cool example that we've just recently looked at is, again, how can you help the business user? So think of a brand like Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, right? They have about 180 maisons.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be amazing if you can just say, this is my brand style guide. So this is really for multinational, multi-brand corporations. write the product descriptions in this particular style guide for all these maisons and just get it done. Like, I think there's an amazing plethora of like opportunities out there.
Yeah. Do you want to jump in at the end?
Yeah, I think it's a good 1-2 question. I think what's the most interesting future use case? I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would say, can you reduce the amount of different technology components in your technology estate by using this technology? So it's a question rather than an answer. I'm answering a question with a question, I know. But what we're seeing is actually where historically we'd have to use a number of different technology components to create a solution, we can actually use fewer components because of the power of some of this generative AI technology. So my future use case would be, what can you do to simplify your technology estates? Because we've heard a lot today and we talked a lot about how that can be a limiting factor in what you're trying to achieve. So can you simplify what you're doing using this stuff? And then what stands in the way of that? Well, you've got a lot of, you can have a lot of legacy technology and disparate systems from disparate vendors in your estate. So probably your own organization is the thing that will stand in your way a lot of the time. But can you do something quickly that shows the value of trying to do that? And if you can show the value, can you then get buy-in to kind of scale that out? I'd sort of, our kind of company kind of motto is think big but start now. So have the bigger picture, but start trying to generate value as quickly as possible. And that's the kind of the sort of the thing I'd probably have a go at. I'd say.
Brilliant. Well, Matt and Michael, I think you made a fantastic case for the, AI is a tool ultimately. Yeah. And I think you spoke very well about how, it really depends on in whose hands it is, how the teams are structured to use it best. And Leona and Chris, I think you made a great case for brick and mortar in the age of digital and AI, and how you can bring those two together. So I just want to thank all of you for coming and speaking to us today, and thank you for the audience as well for your brilliant questions. So let's just give them all a hand.